Thanks, Lewis. Thanks so much. I would not miss this conference. It is one of the best. So, and it's so great to see a lot of familiar names come through the chat and participants. So, welcome. A couple of things before we begin, and I share my screen just for context. Prior to us going live, we started a little bit late because we had a little snafu with the sound. So, when I share my screen, I may or may not have sound today, which would impact the screen reader test at the end of the presentation. If that happens, I will record something and get it out, as that I feel like we can't really close the loop or finalize this presentation today without that test. So I will do my best, but I will also have it visually on the screen as I go through it. We'll work, make it work. Before I share just some context, I'm going to provide a sample design today that what my intention was to create a before and after sample e-learning module that we could review and track and find issues and barriers, and then track it using the W3C methodology in which I teach. When that started, I designed this in Claude Design and eventually moved it to Claude Code. You'll find that this became a real meta experience around this presentation design, because it went from being how do we audit and remediate content and follow a methodology, and then it went into, well, how is this actually built? And then let's track and find issues and fix the issues. So, what became very apparent to me during this process was how much the accessibility experience is needed around designing AI content and using tools such as Claude Design and Claude Code. In fact, when I started, I think I posted about this recently. I was at round 50. When I finished, I was at round 80. So just wanted to set the stage for this. There's going to be multiple tabs. There's learner view, audit view, remediated view, and then a how this is built view. So we're going to start with the learner view. We're going to start with the intended, spot the barriers, record them, track them with the W3C methodology, and then we're going to dive into the design itself. I hope you have questions. This is the first time that I'm using Claude Design to present with. This is the first of this content and the first time I'm sharing this work with you or with anyone in the community. So questions and all of the things that come up today are going to be super helpful in getting this to, just advancing our work around using AI and accessibility specifically. So with that, I will go ahead and share my screen. And I have to set this up in a way that I am comfortable. So I'm going to be looking at a monitor to my right, which allows me to still see Zoom, but then I will be, demoing straight forward towards my camera. So I will be looking back and forth. Um, and I want you to have this design. So I'm going to give you this link and you can follow along in the chat. Here it comes. I'm just going to call it design example. Okay. And this is not published through any, it's not an HTML file. It's just the published Claude uh, artifact. It is able to be opened. I will also give you an HTML file at the end if you prefer that. Okay. I just want to make sure that I've got what I need up before I continue. No link. Design example. The link didn't attach. Okay. Awesome. Give me a second. Let's grab it. Oh, we got it. Works for me. Okay, let's try it one more time. I'm just gonna do this. Yes. All right, one more. One more. Claude link. Zoom is set to block audience from saving or copying chat. Okay, I just want to confirm that that link is the correct link and that we are able to. How are we doing? It worked. It worked. All right, I'm going to continue. So we're going to start in the learner view. So I have learner view, audit view, remediated view, sample report, and how it was built. Good. I see some thumbs up coming through. Thank you. As we go through, I will be testing, but I'd also like you, there's to be identifying and finding any barriers that might be in this example. So the example is a module 3, preventing workspace harassment. And then there's some content, and it goes all the way up to track what you find section. And so for the first section, there are 12 barriers that were created purposely with intent. And just note for any screen reader or keyboard users that are here today, the example below intentionally contains accessibility barriers for training purpose. It's not the bug of the page. And so if you ever get stuck, you must press escape to get out of the traps if there are any. And then we're all going to use the tab, shift tab, and enter only. I'm making some assumptions that you have some knowledge, first of all, of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So I'm not going to go into detail too much on those, but I'm also going to walk you through how we would look for this, for these barriers. So there are 12. So in the chat, for those of you who have who have worked with me before or who have done keyboard testing, or have provided, designed e-learning, what might be, just looking at this, one of the 12? Now you could go ahead and cheat and go down and look at reveal the audit, but if not, could you identify some in the chat right now? What is a barrier that you can identify? And some of that might be not being able to visually go through this and identify it. You may have to, and I will demo, select. And in my case, I'm going to select Module 3, Preventing Workspace Harassment, and I'm going to right-click and inspect this element because I want to know if it's a heading or not. And so I'm going to put my mouse over it. I'm going to select it. And why I'm looking for a heading, I'm looking for an H1. And is it an H1 or is it an H2? Sorry, I want it to be an H2. So it is an H2. So I may need to go through and check all the headings. I may need to check the links. I may need to check, is anything moving that can't be stopped? Is there something missing from any multimedia or video? How about the form? How about the button, start quiz? So taking a look at our example here, what are some barriers? So I see some things coming in. So I'm going to read them in the chat. Okay, so you have identified color contrast. You identified you can't tab through, Phoebe. Yes, that's right. You can't. So if you were to practice tabbing, you can tab, but you won't know where you are. So if you tab, and I'll do that with you. If I start from the top, I'm in learner view. Also, note that this example is using a tabbed panel, and it has been coded using design code to act as a tab panel should, which means that my right arrow would move me from panel to panel. And then my tab will bring me inside the view. So I'm going to go to learner view and press tab. Nothing is being highlighted because there's no focus. There's no visible focus until I get into sign to save progress. So you did notice that. That's good. I cannot activate that start quiz button. Select here, non-descriptive. Yes, Wanda, very good. Color contrast for the paragraph is not meeting contrast. What else? Did I miss anything? The arrows and the quick contact tips have no keyboard focus. I think somebody pointed out that the arrow buttons are far too small, Jason. That is a good catch. The play button isn't reachable with the keyboard. Yes, and the form looks like already has errors, or also the form just has labels. It says full name and email, and I could not play the video. Okay, so these are things that we might identify. Now, we didn't attach any and no captions were available. And in this case, we're just spotting some issues. We're identifying where there may be some barriers. Now, if we were to continue down in the example, in this design example where it says track what you find, you could log them. And this has been coded to announce and identify every time an issue is logged. When we screen read test this, it will announce you have logged 1 of 12. You have logged 2 of 12. And design code was able to do that with some of the patterns I fed it to behave in a way that we want all of the labels announced, we want the buttons announced, we want states announced. So I just feel like I should add that in as we're going through this part. This is a meta experience here, but we could track all of the 12 barriers inside, and then we're going to reveal the audit. So let's reveal it. So I'm going to select reveal the audit, and below you can read through each one and how it would be stated. But up top, I've also have some numbers and some labels to go with what you just found. Okay. So we had heading skipped from H2 to H5. We had hero image has no alt text. We had the select here was too vague, right? No captions or transcripts. We identified that the arrow targets were too small. Required is only shown by a red border only. There was nothing to say that that was required. And then the button, which happens a lot in AI, was it was not a real button, right? So it was not focusable, it was not keyboard operable. And so we'd want to make sure that we used proper prompting or language. So this is the example for, the 12 issues in plain language first, not in the W3C's methodology. So if I was to select every one of these numbers and panels, there's a little more context about what's wrong, who it blocks, and then it attaches the Web Content Accessibility Guideline. So hero image has no alt text. What's wrong? The photo has nothing to say what it shows. A screen reader either skips it or reads the raw file name. Who's it blocks? Blind or low vision screen readers. It's 1.1 non-context. What is the select here designed to do? If it's I'm sorry, I'm reading Jason's comment in the chat. What is the select here designed to do? If it's supposed to open in a new window, shouldn't that be indicated somehow? So, what we're referring to, I believe, when you say select here to review the policy before you begin is a link. It's vague, it's not descriptive. Now, what you're asking is sometimes you see links will open in a new tab or new window. This is somewhat it's debatable inside the accessibility communities because it's a bit outdated. Most technology and browsers now will tell the screen reader user, will alert the screen reader that it will open a new link. That's not consistent. That's not the case always. So my practice is to add it once at the beginning of a module, add it once at the beginning of a course, add it once in a presentation, and let folks know all links will open in a new tab. And so I would not put that after every link because I could be creating more noise and redundancy to the screen reader. So letting folks know upfront is always helpful, but I wouldn't repeat it over and over unless I know and I tested my tool and I tested my content and I would listen is my screen reader. And then we could also have the conversation like when I did the test for this, that Safari, when I tested, was giving me different results than Chrome, and VoiceOver gave different results in NVDA. And I had to prompt Claude Code to find the differences inside the tool and say, this happened in Safari, this did not happen in Chrome. And then I needed Claude Code to understand that I was testing in different environments, two different browsers. And you'll see in the rounds that it took that it had to cross-reference and check and fix issues that were a Safari issue and a VoiceOver issue, but not a Chrome issue. All right, so I'm going back to the chat because there's some really great stuff going on in here too. So Paul said to view the policy before you begin access the insert document named document. So, right, so yeah, the example. And then April's got a comment that that's not always true on a website when things open in the same tab, new window, another website, or download a PDF. Yeah, so I'm going to go back to the presentation and then we'll take a look. You guys are having great conversation. Keep that going. I'm going to tab to the audit view now. Let me just tab here. So I've got to skip to main content. Because it's there now, I'll mention in my first round in the how it was built, I did ask it for a skip to main content. It did not create one. So in another round, I had to reprompt it to add the skip to main content in. So I'm going to navigate to the audit view now. And in the audit view, similar, it's going to tag what we just discussed, the 12 barriers. It's also going to give examples of how to improve it. And so we add a alt text to the hero image. The intro contest was improved. The number 3, the link text now says read the full workplace conduct policy, right? A descriptive. Number 4, the captions and transcripts. There's also proper heading order. And then the transcript is no longer read the transcript. It's now read the recognizing workplace harassment transcript. And then there's the auto advanced and the target size. And so you can see the improvements. The accessible carousel now has manual controls. It does not auto advance. The targets are larger, and then the pause play toggle. Now, what took an extra step here was the visual was one step, but then I needed the screen reader to announce tip 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3. I also wanted the code to have the autoplay on, autoplay off. So when we test with the screen reader, we'll also be listening to make sure that that code has the correct patterns and also announces what it needs to announce. So the hero image have no alt text. It's a decorative image. So in this case, if we were saying that we need to have one or the other, we need to have either mark it decorative or give it alt text. What I would encourage you to do is be careful of the file name, because a lot of times Claude will just call it whatever like if I just called this, if I never named the file and it became like screenshot or image 5678 something .png, it will call that out if I don't properly mark this with decorative and say make it decorative. But in this case, I felt that it was an image that was conveying to a sighted person who could see it that there were two women here talking, and then they're smiling, and it's kind of setting the tone. So it was important, especially at the start of the module, to have an alt, in my opinion, right? Because this is not like best practice or what's compliant. This is now we're talking about preference or what we would say in context, right? So in context, I felt that this image needed alt text. Okay, now you could say, I believe that's decorative, and you could argue that and then make it decorative, and that would be preference. And there is no, as long as it doesn't say, screenshot dot 1234567.png or something like that. All right, so I will continue a little bit more down the page and show that now sign in, save progress also has a required, and it's not just going to rely on that red border. And then the start quiz will be able to be I can tab to start quiz. I can tab to all of the items, and there's a red 2-pixel or thicker border that meets the 3:1 contrast ratio as I continue on to tab. And when I start the quiz, the modal popped up. Claude Design and Claude Code needed the W3C, the ARIA patterns for modal to get this right in terms of also locking it. So when I tab, I could not tab behind the modal. I could only tab on the modal. And so it needed extra prompting. You'll see in the 80 rounds, the back and forth with that the order was proper from question 1 of 5, which is a heading, to then go into the radio groups. It needed extra prompting to make the contrast appropriate, because when you select, you need a not just the color, but I also needed the symbol, the dot needed to be recognizable that I selected it. It also had to announce the screen reader that it had been selected. And when I start and submit quiz or close, that those are announced. And when I submit quiz, as soon as I hit return, that it would then read quiz submitted, thanks, continue to next section. So you'll see in the rounds that that also took some time with code and sending in the patterns, that it wasn't just in design, it didn't do that alone. So I'm going to continue on. The audit findings are here again for you. And at the bottom of every tab, this is good. I don't know if Jacob Wood is here. I hope he is. Hi, Jacob, if you're here. Jacob taught me to add at the end of every tab some way to move forward, because you'll see in some of his presentations, I'm going to scroll back up. Well, you'll notice in his presentation, sometimes he talks about the tabs at the top, because if I was to tab through this, it's not a tab now, it's a right arrow, left arrow when you're inside the tab panels to go forward. And you have to go through each one after they're selected. So if I was to add at the bottom of the panel a way to advance, then we don't have to go all the way back up to our panel to go to the next tab. We can then jump right to the next one, which is remediated view. Hello, Jacob. So I'm going to pause and just identify and acknowledge that we're talking a lot about using AI to create learning content, and we're talking a lot about using, specifically, I hear a lot about Claude design, Claude code, and to express my hope that you can see this as an opportunity to advance your accessibility knowledge. Now, to code all of this, or to have all this knowledge doesn't just come, from asking Claude to do that. It does require a lot of back knowledge of what the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are to get to the point where Claude is going to build you a WCAG 2.2 accessible learning module or e-learning experience. So I'll just pause there, and I'll ask for you to test this with me a little bit more. So if you find or spot errors, we can continue to improve how it was built and the MD file that I'll give you at the end of this that could help you get started. Thanks, Catherine. Appreciate it. So for the remediated view, I'm just going to hop down here, continue on past our example that we've already looked at and checked. And I'm going to jump down to let's see, what changed and why it works. Now, this is about the sample module 3. This is saying, so in order to improve the module example, what did we do and why it works? So that's written out for you. And then there's criteria that supports it. And so now let's talk about more, even though we've been talking about, let's talk more about the build itself and the prompts that took to get this compliant. And I'd love to be able to do my screen reader testing to share with you. So I'm going to test it. And if we don't have sound, like I said, I will record it and then post that and get it out to everyone, because I don't know if it's gonna work. All right, so in the remediated view, you have the updates, the changes, and what changed to make it accessible, and then the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines that go with that. So go to sample report. So I'm now in the sample report tab, and the purpose of this presentation was to talk about the W3C's methodology. And you as an instructional designer or learning development, when you're designing your own work, you're going to stay mostly in that learning and audit view. You're not, maybe you don't even attach a criteria to it. You're just going to know, okay, this needs better color contrast, and this is why. This needs captions, and you'll do it that way. And then there's the learning process of, well, the way that I learned about the criteria was through the auditing process. And so Audit methods, then the scope of view, the executive summary, the severity scale. If you're really trying to take a deep dive into the criteria, take a piece of your work and apply what we're doing today. Apply this methodology. Take one module, use the audit methods, and that's the keyboard. That's choosing your screen reader. That's choosing your browser. And then the scope of the view, scope of the review. Inside module 3, I'm going to look at these 5 areas. And then your executive summary identifies, how many issues were found. It's a little more, it can be a little bit more in depth, but for the purpose of the example, I kept it very short, just that 12 issues were found across perceivable, operable, understandable, robust. And then the overall conformance level does not conform to WCAG 2.2 AA. I identified a severity scale, which is one that we use regularly, which is the critical, significant, moderate, and recommendation. And so to help prioritize remediation, we use that, is it critical? Content or functionality is completely inaccessible to some users. Significant, content or functionality is very difficult for some users. We have moderate, content or functionality may require additional time or effort for some users because accessibility or usability guidelines and best practices are not followed. And then we have recommendations. Content or functionality can be made more usable for everyone by aligning with best practices. So for recommendation, back to the comment around, I would add opens in new links, open new tab. If I'm going to suggest that, I'm going to mark that as a recommendation. In this example, it said that captions were defaulted to turn on. I don't I don't prescribe to that. It was the design, and I noticed it this morning, and I went to go change some things this morning for you, and then I was like, oh no, 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 don't touch this, because I'm sure there's things that could be fixed, but I wasn't going to touch it right before we went on today. The recommendation, I would default to not turning captions on and allow folks to turn it on, because sometimes that's a visual piece as well, but so there's little things that we do as recommendations, and they're important. Usability. So that's why it's listed there. Detailed findings. So this is the way you would write this up. If you're in quality assurance, if you're in a role where you're reviewing work, and realistically, we want to design with accessibility in mind from the start, right? You want to go into it knowing, all right, I know I need proper keyboard focus. I know I need to not use color alone. So you have these criteria that you design with. Then somebody checks it, and that can be somebody, internally, externally. I'd always encourage you to use and work with folks who are screen reader natives, who are using the tools regularly, different perspectives, and have those testing, not just within yourself, but also have it tested. But if you're someone who's testing content in your role or want to, this would be the methodology you would follow. It would be a finding. It would be the impact, the severity, the criteria, and the suggested fix. And that is how you would write it up. So for example, hero image has no alt text. Impact blind and low vision screen reader users. Severity, significant. The criteria, 1.1 non-text content, and the suggested fix, meaningful alt text described what the image conveys. And then you would do all your detailed findings down the page, and that's how you report it. That's the W3C methodology. And that is one way of recording barriers and sharing it. I would say sharing it with external or sharing it with stakeholders. For those of you who are consultants and freelancers, when you're creating this work, it could be a nice way for you to track and share with your stakeholders as you're doing the work too. Okay, I'm going to scroll down the page and move us to the how it was built. How are we doing on time? Any questions that I need to address? How it was built. All right. So how it was built is the tab 5. Also, what I want to point out is that I did prompt it to add the little check mark symbol next to the 5. I didn't necessarily need that because I have a border telling me that how it was built was selected and that color contrast. But I did add an additional symbol to identify that we were on the 5th tab. And then I added Claude code. I wanted the accordion, and I wanted these, I forget what these are called. There's a word, I have it in my mind. And when I mean it is the down arrow What are these called? They look like drop downs. No, there's actually Efrons. Efrons. Carrot. Efron. Isn't it is it Efron? Carrot. Yeah, it's a carrot. Downward, pointing down. An upside down triangle. Chevron. Thank you, Jacob. It's a chevron. All right. So the foundational brief. Uh, foundational brief. I linked everything below in the resources section that was added to this design to get to the final version. And the foundational brief was shared for me from Jacob Woods. I posted his Slack down below. This was what we started with. We follow WCAG 2.2 AA, semantic HTML, vanilla CSS, JS only, no non-semantic elements for interactive controls. Here on out, it's Zac Efron. Yes, that's what we'll call it. Sorry, I'm reading the chat. That was from Brittany. Every interactive element uses the correct native tag, button, input details, dialogue. By the way, I'm learning French, and I think I just pronounced that as a French a. Full keyboard support, correct tab order, escape to close, focus return to the trigger. I'm reading these. These are important. Visible, thick, offset, focus indicators, meaning contrast in every state. First rule of ARIA, don't use it unless you must, and justify every attribute in a visible section. Strict heading hierarchy, a skip link, and only the HTML5 landmark regions that earn their place. Header, main, footer, headings, not extra names, section structure content. I did have to prompt it. You'll see in round, I don't know, maybe 60 something where I said I wanted it to say footer. It kept calling it content information in the screen reader. That is correct. So I added an ARIA label to announce it was as a footer. And then there's where ARIA was used and why section, especially around the tabs and the panels. There was the tabs manual pattern, the APG. So there are ARIA pattern documents that the W3C provides, and you can give these documents to Claude Code and ask it to follow the pattern, and it will. And then it may need additional tests. So every time I prompted, I tested, and then I'd prompt and test, prompt and test. And I will share a tip that was at the end that was shared with me about how to do this better going forward. Our label, each tab spells out its position. So audit view tab 2 of 5 was selected, needed to be said. Do you need a screen reader to test Weston? So I would recommend, yeah, I would recommend testing this with a screen reader. So I use VoiceOver built into my Mac. NVDA is free for Windows. But you don't, I mean, you need it to test to know that it announces and it is working with your screen reader properly, right? So what documents did you load into Claude? Jennifer Peters, everything I loaded is down below. I'm getting there. ARIA Live, polite, you've logged X of 12. Another ARIA was that the carousel display announces the tip position, that it also skips the screen reader will skip the text that says 1 of 3 because it doesn't need to be redundant, but it needed to hear it. There's also some ARIA for expanded, letting the accordion know that you have it open, letting it know that it closed. So you'll see the ARIA label for quiz dialogue needed to be added, and then I did the one for footer. There's a tab here, the second one, reusable prompts that you can borrow and take and test and work with. There's reusable prompts for accessible tabs with screen readers, the automated tool. I did test this with Arc Toolkit, which is a it's a extension that allows you to test web pages and other web content. I also compared it to Wave, and I ran it through the Wave tool, and I ran it through the Arc Toolkit, and then I told Claude Code what they found and why didn't he found it or she found it. And so then we did a comparison. You'll see that in the rounds that I was like, wait, we did some additional testing outside of this environment and outside of this program. There's the model dialogue with deliberate focus for prompt, carousel prompt, announcements and wording review. And then as I continue down, there's more prompting. And then every round it took with the correction I gave and the knowledge it required. And so you can go through and look at correction given, fix the tab order in the switch in the view switcher, not reachable or correct. I love this. I was like, every time you make a mistake or I make a mistake, we need to record it. Who did what and when. So it says tab order is a conformance requirement and how to test it by keyboard. That's a 2.4.3 focus order reopened at round 51. So it will regress. And so the MD file that I have for you that I'll share, and then some of the prompting, what I did learn thanks to Mark Sperman was that we need to stop it from regressing. We have to prompt it to not regress. So in order to, here's the structures that we want to put in place. And then so let's say we want to build an accordion in the MD, it's going to build the accordion. It's going to be proper. Let's test it. Okay, great. Now let's build this next activity, test it. Great. We need to not regress. And so if it had to be reopened, it reopened it. So I believe that when I got to I'm going to jump down to I think it was like around 50 something, where I went from design to code. Knowing what I know now, I would have left design faster or sooner and went over to code. So I would have moved from Claude design to Claude code maybe after the fifth or sixth prompt when I got the visual I was looking for, or just kind of the layout or the template. And then I would have gone to code. And then, so round 51 reopens round 1 and 2. We had to go back to 1 and 2. You'll see around 53 that I gave it the tabs manual example again. So it was a fun few days. The button pattern in round 60. And is there anything else that I want to point out? Okay, if I was going to add another round, I'd be curious, what would you add to? What would be another round? Looking at the remediated version, looking at this design as a whole, what would you do differently? What would you add? What would you prompt? Because I would prompt on my accordions to have an expand all, close all, at least on this page, because there was 5 accordions here, 5 drop downs. And so I might do an expand all, close all. So I wouldn't have to go through each one individually, open and closing them. So that could be round 81. And then the reference resources, Jennifer, you asked, what did I feed it? So these were what I gave it. I gave it Jacob Stop Telling AI to make it accessible. I gave it the ARIA Authoring Practices Guide. I gave it the checklist spreadsheet that I use when I teach how to audit. I gave it the W3C tutorials for images, forms, tables, menus, and more, because there was tables in here and I needed to make sure that those tables were correct. And then the dialogue modal. And then Adrian Rosselli is been in this accessibility. He has been in this area for a very long time. He is widely credible, and he has an article called Where to Put Focus When Opening a Modal Dialogue, because it depends. And he talks about the context and that it's not always the close button, or it's not always the heading, and when to make that decision. And then for future builds, Mark Sperman recommended 2 changes for the next build. The standing reference doc, instead of deriving fixes from scratch each time and building interactive components one at a time, build something, test it, use it again. And so I'm going to give you a accessible elearningpatterns.md. I'm going to drop that into the chat now. And he is working on a step-by-step guide that we're going to test. I didn't feel comfortable sharing it because he shared it with me yesterday and I haven't quite tested it out. So that was a lot. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to stop my share, answer any questions, and then drop that file in. Coming up for air, taking a breath.
My head is spinning. That was a lot, Nicole. Holy smokes.
I do apologize. I have been in the design. So I was a little late to Claude. I started using it just a couple of weeks ago. Design. And then just this week, getting ready for this presentation, I went into the abyss, down the rabbit hole, and I was just like, we got to get this. How do we make this accessible? Because we're all talking about how great of a tool this is and how easy it is to use, but you still do need a ton of knowledge and prompting. So, okay.
What kind of cloud account do you have?
I have the one that's $20 a month. What is the basic?
Mm-hmm. All right. How about this question from Jennifer? When you do this again, how many of these rounds do you think you'll be able to eliminate?
Excellent question. I don't know until I do it, but let's say, what about a target? I was like, can we do it in 50 rounds? I don't know. I'm not quite sure. That's a really good question. Please take this MD file and I encourage people to give it a try. Give it a try, see how many rounds you can get it. We can make it a who can get the least amount of rounds.
I'm
Oh, I
just
didn't.
curious. Yeah, it looks like Erica upgraded to the $20 one as well, but I'm wondering how much do you think that you would be able to do this on the free account or no?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, because I'm not a Claude expert, or I don't have that much knowledge. I think there's some gaps in my Claude experience in terms of all the subscriptions and stuff. But and then Jacob did mention the Claude code for desktop. Thanks, Jacob. So I would do the desk. I think I would use the desktop version next time, and there are extensions that can be added. So maybe with the extensions and the MD file we could get it down to better rounds. And again, I don't know much about the differences of the Claude subscriptions and I don't even know. Someone asked me what model I used. I don't know. I didn't pay attention to which like I think I started in Fable because it was free or I had usage credits. Um, and then I might have switched over to Sonnet. There's different or Opus. I don't know.
right. No, interesting. Erica, the file is just above you a few in the thread there. Nicole had posted it. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. Um,
So what's the difference between isn't that what I just gave, the product requirement document? Isn't that what the MD is? The .md? That's what I thought I did. I guess it's just a different name for it. Because my .md is my every time I start, this is what my requirement is, Jason. So I believe it's the same thing. It's just a different name. Yes, so it is. That's what that MD file is. It's like these are the structures and the design that I want. Um, So that with the step-by-step guide would be my, what'd you call it? A PRD? A PRD.
good. Sarah just mentioned that Cloud Design isn't available for the free account, so good to know.
Okay. Yeah. This was to me an important demo because I've been seeing a lot of push towards Claude design in our space. A lot of talk about how powerful it is and what it can do. And then I know, we've started there's been a few of us, talking about using more specific prompting to get it accessible. And then I wanted to take that to the test. Like what type of specific, how specific, what do we need our roadmaps and our product, our, PRDs or MD files to say and do to get to that point. And then still being able to verify with your screen reader, which I didn't get to do today. And I will do it. I'll make a recording because my volume wasn't going to work of so that you can hear out and also you can hear or see depending because voiceover will show you what it's saying out loud so that you can also gauge like what should you be hearing. You should know that this button has been activated and that you are on tip 1 of 3 or you're on tip 2 of 3 that the autoplay is on, the autoplay is off, like so you can visually create these in design, but can you get them to the point where they are appropriately behaving for the screen readers and assistive technology? And also being mindful that, sorry, one more last thing, that other assistive technology like voice activation, that the label that you designed is the label that the code has. So if I say autoplay on with my voice activation assistive technology that, and then I could say autoplay off. Do those match? Because that's also important.
Hmm.
No, Jason, I have not. That's, I have not tested it with Squirm. Uh,
What kind of problems did you have any issues with Claude, like giving you any or leading you in the wrong direction at any point?
in which way? In how?
And just in
Sorry.
anything when you were building, when you were developing it all, where something just didn't work? Or was it
Um,
pretty much accurate the entire time?
no, I mean that you'll see in the rounds. No, because in the like I would ask it to um give it a focus a focus border that was met contrast. And then it wouldn't change a border or give a border, it would change the background color. And it was like I didn't ask for a background color
Yeah.
change. So things like that would happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am not familiar with cloud design at all, so I'm really curious about it.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the I feel, yeah, so this like I said turned into looking for barriers. I mean, it turned out to be more about the tool because I was impressed with what it could do, but I'm I'm more wanting to see us be able to develop accessible content with it and do that well
Yeah.
before we start designing other designing in it is what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's
Interesting.
some really great stuff. I want to read all your chat comments, so I'm doing both of those things. Yeah, I'm very
I'm sort of interested. I find it really fascinating how, if we had this conversation last year, I mean, it wouldn't have existed actually. Like last year, we couldn't even conceive that some of this stuff was possible. And now it seems like there's so many folks in chat that are articulate about um, using AI versus, you know, like say this event last year where people were just like figuring it out or trying to dive in. So it really is fascinating.
yes, it is. Yeah. Um, Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this work. Thank you to all of you for your questions. I hope that this, continues. I know that going to take that MD file and the file that Mark shared with me and see what I can do from there from the start, like really as if I didn't create this at all. So I encourage you to do the same. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll just put my LinkedIn in here or if you want to contact me and ask me a question. I am adding this to the course. Of course, I'm going to plug the course that I have. I have a course, Making Online Content Accessible for All, and I'm going to add this to that content in the self-paced version coming soon.
Feel free to paste it in chat as well. Just all the information, all the good stuff.
Thank
Feel
you.
free to add that. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being here. It was great way to start the event.